Sister TV. I'm Solange Lopes and I'm the founder of the Corporate Sister website and brand. Today I am discussing making a plan to reach our long-term career and life goals. Since we're still very much at the beginning of the year, many, if not most of us, are still busy setting goals and ironing out our priorities for the next year. But then what comes after we set goals, and even while we're in the process of setting goals, is the lingering question that basically asks, well, how do we go about achieving these goals? And that's where much of the stress, much of the frustration and anxiety comes in when it comes to dealing with our goals. So the first thing really when it comes to reaching and achieving our goals is really to define what kind of goals we're really looking at. Very often we suffer from short-term nearsightedness when it comes to our goals, in that we tend to consider our short-term goals, what it is that we need to accomplish in the next month, in the next 6 months, or even in the next year or two. And what this does is it really limits the potential of our career and restricts our vision in terms of the bigger dreams, in terms of the bigger goals that we may have for our career and life. So when we talk about making a plan to reach and achieve our goals, we first talk about defining what our long-term career and life goals are. What those goals that we're looking at, not in the next month, in the next year, or even the next 2 years, but those goals that we're looking at in the next 10 or 20 years. What is it that you really want to accomplish in the next decade? It's a big question, but it's a big question that also opens the door for a big career, big dreams, and big goals. So rather than restricting ourselves to short-term goals that may restrict our vision and restrict the potential for expansion of our work and our lives, by extension, why not think about those goals that span a much longer period of time and that get us closer to our dreams, closer to our purpose and our vision. So the first step here in making a plan to reach and achieve our goals is really to begin by asking ourselves what our long-term goals / dreams / ambitions are for our career and by extension our lives. Is it to write the book? Is it to gain tenure if you're in academia? Is it to reach the C-suite if you're in corporate? What are those long-term goals and dreams that really motivate us, put the fire back in you, and reawaken your purpose? Another reason why we're considering these long-term goals, these long-term dreams, is that those really have the ability to put back the fire in us, to reawaken our sense of purpose and make us feel more motivated and more challenged to reach them, as opposed to the shorter term goals that kind of restrict us and may not excite us as much. So step number one is really to identify those long-term career and by extension work goals. Step number two, once these goals have been identified, and it doesn't have to be a really clear identification process, the ideas can still be in the process of being worked out, but at least having an awareness of what these goals are and what they may encompass is a good starting point. Once these have been identified clearly, or maybe not so clearly, but at least they've been identified, step number two is kind of working backwards from these goals and defining the big building blocks of these goals. Let me give you an example. If the big dream, the big goal is to write the book, what are the big building blocks that would lead you to finally write the book? Right? It may be coming up with an idea. It may be setting up the skeleton of the book. It may be filling up the skeleton of the book and having a good idea as to the outline of the book before sitting down and writing it. Each one of these building blocks is a project in and of itself. It's an enterprise that may be individual to you, or maybe collective, as it may involve other individuals. So are you able to identify those big building blocks, and again, this doesn't have to be a very specific, clear process just yet, but you have to at least get to the outline of it. If you can define the big steps, the big building blocks, right, those big projects that can help you get to your ultimate goal, then you would have achieved step number 2, and you would have gained more clarity, more direction, and more of a sense of excitement towards your long-term goals. That was step number 2. Last but not least, step number 3 now is to grab each and every one of those building blocks. Let's say building block number 1 to writing the book is to define an outline. Maybe you already have an idea. Now you want to define an outline and kind of have a bit of a skeleton for your book. In this case, the next question that I challenge us to ask ourselves is, what is it that you and I, all of us, can do each and every single day to get closer to accomplishing each and every one of those building blocks? What it may be is maybe to get up every single day and have just a small part of this outline down, right? And within a certain amount of time, the outline would be completed. That is the smallest thing, the smallest step that you can take towards accomplishing this building block, this particular project that gets you closer to your long-term goal of writing the book. And making a habit of devoting some time each and every day to each building block, each big project, or at least one of the big projects that gets you closer to your long-term goal can make a world of difference. So when it comes to making a plan towards achieving our long-term goals, these are the 3 steps, again, that I would recommend. Number 1, define these long-term goals, right? By taking a longer-term vision as opposed to a shorter-term vision. Number 2, work backwards and define the big building blocks or the big projects that get you closer to achieving this dream. And number 3, for each one of those building blocks, what is one thing? What is the smallest thing that you can do every day to reach one of those or as many of those building blocks as possible to get yourself as close as possible to achieving your long-term goals? These are 3 simple yet effective steps that can help all of us begin to put together a plan in action to reach those long-term goals in our career and in our lives by extension, by devoting a little bit of time and doing a little bit at a time each and every single day to get closer to those goals and dreams. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear your insights about your process when it comes to putting a plan into action to reach your goals. Please email us at corporate@thecorporatesister. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.